Hi, welcome out to the channel. Thank you for coming out. And today we're going to talk about mental and emotional health. But before we do that, I wanted to give a shout out. Thank you to all the subscribers. Thank you for being part of the community. And if you're new out here and you find something that you like, or if you learn something, think about hitting that subscribe button and becoming part of the community too. I'm going to talk about mental health and food. I know you know about emotional eating, but I want to take it a lot further in this episode. So I'm going to talk about food as wealth. I'm going to talk about gluttony. I'm going to talk about what happens when you're starving. I'm going to talk about what are you really saying when you say you can't change how you eat. Then I'm going to cover the law of attraction, how it imprints, hurts, and two different phases in that law of attraction. And then I'm going to talk about how do you change. I was thinking the other day about eating, food choices, and how food choices can indicate how you perceive the world. I've gone through my battle with food. I'm still going through my battles with food. Food has a special place in the world where I grew up. I grew up in a world where food is considered wealth and quantity mattered. And this desire for wealth created interesting twists in food production, but not just food production, in how people interacted with food. So let's look at white flour. White flour is really expensive to make. And in ancient China, only the wealthy could afford it. If you think about it, say you have 2 pounds a week. To make white flour, the bran and the germ has to be removed. That's about 30% of the weight. Instead of 2 pounds of flour to sell, you have about a pound and a half. And you had to spend all this time processing it. Okay, so if you could afford white flour, you were wealthy. So everybody wanted to have white flour. One, because it tasted so nummy, and two, because, we put value in wealth. So what happens? So we get this milling process. It's industrialized, and making white bread becomes so affordable that it's cheaper than whole wheat bread. And that brings up industrialization. Industrialization opened up the world to what once was considered luxury items. And what's the negative side of luxury? Well, when it comes to foods were usually stripped of their nutritional value. There's more than just nutritional value when it comes to luxury foods. The wealth of food availability led to gluttony. And gluttony is so acceptable in the world that its cues are sometimes overlooked. For me, I have to think about stopping eating. It doesn't just happen naturally because I'm full. So, what are some thoughts on starvation? What happens when you're starving? I've had horses my whole life, and I remember this really talented ex-racing horse that was sold to a rider like me. And so let's call this ex-racing horse Rambo. And Rambo was a really big horse. His withers were above my head, and he had a beautiful big gait. So he's sold to this rider like me, just an average person. The thing about ex-racing horses is they eat a lot of food. They eat 2 to 3 times as much as those little quarter horses. The owner ended up starving the horse, and probably out of ignorance or probably just out of lack of funds. Well, this horse got lucky. Rambo got lucky. Someone told someone, and it got around to the eventing circles, and a trainer went out to look at Rambo. Now, Rambo's a bag of bones, but Rambo was talented and he did have potential, so the trainer bought the horse, and it took months to get the weight back on the horse. And here's the thing with a horse that's been starved of the nutrition they need. they won't stop eating. If you put food in front of them, they are going to eat all of it, and usually as fast as they possibly can. You're going to have to manage their eating for the rest of the horse's life. So for the rest of Rambo's life, his eating was going to have to be managed. And that's kind of how I see people with food. I act as if we've been starved and that we must consume as much as possible to survive. For people, it's going to be a little bit different. And here in the US, people have been starved, but it's not of nutrition. They've been starved of self-worth. They've been starved of friendships, of feeling safe, starved of being able to be heard, starved of feeling valued, starved of finding a place in the world, starved of love. Food has this special ability to fill that void. Yet, food is not unique. Any addictive substance does the exact same thing, right? Food is unique because it isn't an all or nothing recovery like substance abuse. Food does allow for balance, so you can take it in baby steps. Yet, what if you can't change how you eat? Well, back to me. When I was looking at changing my eating habits, I didn't want to change. I had to change because of my health. And it was a choice. I could go the route of Western medicine with their surgery and pharmaceuticals, or I could change what I was eating. I was so resistant to changing my food lifestyle. And it wasn't just that food is so good. I had some deep internal starvations that were making choices for me that I wasn't even aware of. And food was one of those choices, and it filled up those starvations. That understanding of my own internal starvations wasn't conscious. They didn't just pop up. I had actually changed my eating habits over a number of years. I had increased my meditation, and I was practicing internal alchemy when I started to acknowledge these deep internal needs. And you don't want to consciously acknowledge these needs because they're painful. That deep sense of inadequacy somewhere in your life, it's painful. What I realized is that when I was practicing gluttony, and I'm not completely over the gluttony thing, but when I was a ruthless practitioner, there was something that was starved inside of me that food was nurturing, and food was taking care of that small part of me. That's what started to change how I understood people and food. Because it's not just me that has a horrible time with food, and it's not just me who saw wealth in food and eating, and it's not just me who is trying to stop the starvation of the soul with food. I work in holistic healthcare, and I come face to face with myself every day. More people are facing significant health issues because of food choices. Yet even when faced with the reality of food choices, you might want to look the other way. You might want to ignore the food's causing this for you. And if you are willing to continue to do something that is harming you, that could kill you, then this something is fulfilling a need. You are starving internally, deep within you. You are starving, and food fills that void. When Rambo, the ex-racehorse, was starving, he had to eat all the food, even after he was full. It didn't matter if there were other horses who needed food. He had to eat it all. For you and me, the inability to change eating habits is about starving of some emotional need. And that starvation makes you feel unworthy or unmanageable in some part of your life. Have you ever noticed you can feel the emotions of someone close to you? You just know when they're sad or feeling hurt or feeling stressed. That is because your emotions and feelings create this energetic wave in your body. And it's the same with starvations. These starvations, they create this energetic wave in your body, and that vibration is going to spill over into your everyday world. Your decisions are made consciously or unconsciously from this place of starvation. And most of the time, guess what? It's unconscious. The world you and I live in works on the law of attraction. And there's two phases of the law of attraction that I want to talk about. And first, the law of attraction, it's a mirror of what we feel inside gets reflected back to us from the outside. So what that means is we attract what we feel. That's sad. And a lot of times these feelings are unconscious. So we're attracting stuff to us that we don't want and that we're not even consciously aware of. Boy, that's kind of a bummer. But most of the time, our feelings, they have this strong foundation or basis on our early family life when we absorbed the emotions, the hurts, and the trauma of our immediate family. So that's the second phase of the law of attraction that I wanted to talk about. So when you're young, you're a sponge. You absorb what you're around. And even today, you notice that you absorb what you're around. So you actually absorb the energetics of the people that you're around the most. I grew up with this guy, and I'm going to call him Fred. Fred's parents had a really uncomfortable relationship, and it was never talked about in the open or with the kids. His dad had a number of affairs, and his mom knew about the affairs. These affairs, they were a huge betrayal of her devotion and her love in the marriage. And the affairs finally tore the relationship apart. She became angry and defensive and untrusting, justifiably so, and how tragic that happened with someone that she thought she loved and she thought loved her back. So finally they divorced. I don't know if Fred was consciously aware of these affairs. He was pretty young when his parents divorced. And Fred, really great guy. He's super caring. He's always 100% there for people in his life. And the thing that was strange is every relationship where he fell madly in love with his partner and wanted to marry, his partner was continually unfaithful. The partner always slept around, and he would always find out, and then they would always break up. What he didn't realize is not only do you reflect to the external world what is in you, you absorb the energy of the people around you. When we are young, our ability to absorb is at its maximum potential. You're basically this super absorbent bounty paper towel, and you're stewing in all the emotions of your family, and you're absorbing it all. You're becoming what is around you. So if you use your super absorbent bounty paper towel to pick up a Kool-Aid spill, you become like Kool-Aid. If you wipe up milk, you become like milk. And that's why you see families creating the same emotional baggage generation after generation. When you become older, you're not this fresh, clean bounty paper towel. You're a used, old, torn bounty paper towel. And you've forgotten most of the spills you've cleaned up in your life. And all those spills are mixed together with the previous spills. So you can't easily tell if it's milk or if it's Kool-Aid. And what that means is that you don't absorb at the same intense level you did in your youth, and sometimes you stop absorbing altogether. And here's the thing too, most of the time you weren't even conscious of what you were absorbing from your family life. So this is your life. How do you change it? In order to change your law of attraction, in order to change what you've been creating in your life, you need to change something. Anything. And that's going to change everything. It's like changing the pH of water. In a swimming pool, it doesn't matter where you put the acid. Ultimately, it's going to change the pH of the whole swimming pool. It doesn't matter where you start when desiring to change your inner spiritual health. changing one thing, it's ultimately going to ripple through your consciousness and change your spiritual health. And here's the thing. If it just means changing something, well, let's go back to Fred. Fred wanted a monogamous relationship and kept picking women who would betray him. Well, if you just have to change one thing, anything, wouldn't leaving the relationship be a change? No, that is part of the energetic pattern. That is the pattern he learned. His father wouldn't stop sleeping with other women, and his mother ultimately divorced his father. The pattern had no resolution to a partner who slept around except for complete separation. To change this pattern, he had to change how he emotionally interacted with the world. And I just reread my blog. You want to change your world? Make your bed. It talks about making changes to your world and the 4 steps you need to make any change. And the first step is start small. Well, food can be that small step. And what I've learned about food, eating habits, and health, a person's eating habits define how they perceive themselves and the world. If it's important to continue to eat foods that are harming you, if it's essential to eat the best foods, and when I say best foods, you know what this makes me think of? It makes me think of those burgers sprinkled with gold flakes that Wall Street was so fond of years ago. That's, if something is happening like that, then something is starving within you. And that may seem like a brutal reality, yet there's no point in eating foods that harm you or searching for your sense of what's best unless it meets and fulfills a desire within you. So what I found is if you're willing to look at your food choices and how they may be harming or healing your health, any little change you make in your eating will spread out throughout your energetic world, just like changing the pH of a swimming pool. You start in one area and that change is going to ripple throughout your body. You might say, I did change my eating habits and nothing happened. I did this diet and nothing changed. And then I gained all the weight right back because nothing changed. And you're so right. You didn't change anything. At some point, you stopped the diet. Your eating changes didn't become part of your new reality. Instead, your diet was like clothing. You wore the diet like a new outfit, and when you were done with that day, you changed your clothes. The pattern didn't change. So how can you change this pattern? Well, 3 things. Accepting that this may be happening to you. Accepting that you may be using foods in ways that help you with some deep internal hurts, but are causing you some deep physical hurts. 2, think about clean eating. And 3, way woo way. So first, hopefully this episode shines some light on how unconscious interacting with food can be. And second, I like clean eating because instead of focusing on diet, you focus on a concept. Eat more whole foods. More, not all, more. And third, take this concept of focusing on more whole foods and couple it with Wei Wu Wei. Wei Wu Wei comes down to the idea that the best step forward is to select and do the most straightforward, easiest thing possible. To learn more about Taoist thoughts on Wei Wu Wei, check out my episode, Wei Wu Wei and Your Health. So those are 3 steps to change your health, and they can be enough. Yet, what if you want to know what is causing your starvation? What are you missing in your life? Well, then you can take my 8-part series on when it's time to stop starvation. You're going to learn how to identify different types of starvation. You're going to be able to figure out what emotion is driving you. You'll get more tips on how to change your eating habits. And hopefully there's a link up here in the video, or if there's not, there's going to be a link in the video description below. So until next time, I'll catch you on the other side.